Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. This is by Sadie Mother Horror Hartmann, and it is from Page Street Publishing. There's their logo for those of you who care. Look at that great cover. And this is what it says 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. There's a foreword by Josh Mallerman, and then an introduction from Sadie Hartmann in which she explains basically she chose murdered instead of before you die because it gives it a little more urgency, it makes it a little more fun. But she also tells us straight up you're not going to find Stephen King on here because everybody knows Stephen King, and you're not going to find the classics on here because everybody knows the classics. And if you haven't decided to read them by now, she doesn't think her recommendation is going to make you read them. Basically, it's books from the last 23 years, although there is one before that. I think she says it's from the 2000s on, but there is one from 95, I believe. And so she's just going through. It's broken up into sections. You've got paranormal, human monsters, supernatural, natural order horror, and short story collections. And then these are broken down into, except for short story collections, these are broken down into subjects. We'll go with human monsters because that has the most. Just for an example, within human monsters, you have coming of age, grief, loss, and death, cults, slashers and serial killers, body horror, creepy kids, crime and investigation. Love creepy kids. So basically, we'll just show spoilers if I show you a page. All right, I won't show you, but basically what you've got is I'm looking at the left-hand page. Right on the left side of the page, we have a picture of the book, and then an at-a-glance section. And Sadie there's a legend of symbols that you can look at this at a glance, see which symbols are there, and that'll tell you what the book contains. And then it has themes, tone, style, settings, and the publisher. And just, let's see. Let's look at some of these symbols. So the icons, you have book to movie, city life, coming of age, cosmic, crime noir. Let's jump ahead. Religious stuff, small town horror, southern gothic, strong women, survival. Horror tones include bleak, brutal, menacing, disturbing, eerie, gruesome, humorous. Styles include abstract, brisk pacing, Clive Barkerish, dual timeline, intricately plotted, things like that. So, as I was saying, you have, again, the left-hand side of the left-hand page. On the left-hand side, picture of the book, and then all of these things. And then, and that's about a third or so of the page. And the rest of the page has title of the book, author, publication date, a quote from the book, and then her thoughts on it. She does her very best not to spoil anything. There's a few books where she says, just kind of take a look at the at-a-glance part. I don't want to really tell you anything or as little as I can about this book because I think you should go in blind. And then on the right-hand page is basically the reverse of that. The at-a-glance is on the right-hand side. And then there's author spotlights. So she talks about an author, gives a rundown of some of their books, a bunch of recommended titles, and then has the author recommend 3 books. And then there's just a few little things. There's a couple little quizzes. I'm looking at a page here, the Exorcist's Toolkit, which gives you a checklist for what you might need for an exorcism. There are some pro tips. And in the back, there is a book checklist. And technically, there are 91 books in here, and then 10 author spotlights. And I believe I have read, so if we talking about the 91 books on the checklist, I have read 17. There are 16 more that I own and haven't read. And then, so that's 33. So that's about a third. I believe if my math is correct. That's about a third, or actually a little more than a third if we're going with the 91. And then a lot of the stuff in here, there were books that were very much on my radar. You know, I've always planned to pick up, planned to read. This did not change my mind about that in any way. There were books that I was familiar with. I wouldn't say I was necessarily on the fence, because I would say I didn't really actually give it any thought. But now I'm like, all right, I'm into that. That sounds really good. Let's put it on my wish list. And I did go to Amazon and throw some things on my wish list just to keep them in mind, although I can always pick this up and go through it. And then there are books that have never interested me, and this didn't really change my mind. I know there are a couple that absolutely I just not interested in, either because I sat down at the bookstore and read the first few pages of the first chapter and it didn't grab me, or they just hold no interest for me whatsoever. This didn't really change my mind about those. And I do like that Sadie Hartmann will straight up, she tells you what she thinks. And like, there's a couple books, I'm not going to say what they are, but she just straight up says, these books aren't on the list because I didn't like them. They are heavily praised books in some circles. And she's just like, didn't like them. So they're obviously not going to be on my list of recommendations. It's a very fast, easy book to read. I read it in a day. I like the style that Sadie Hartmann writes in. It feels as if she is talking to you. You know, you've bumped into her. Hey, Sadie, what are you reading now? What would you recommend? And she is just talking to you about these books. She does talk about, you know, this is a great place to start. She says that she thinks this list is great for people like me, huge horror fan, have read, got to be thousands of horror books. But I obviously haven't read everything. I haven't heard of everything. So this is a nice resource, but it's also good for people who are just dipping their toe in and looking for recommendations. And again, even if you're not a huge horror fan and you just want to dip your toe, you've still heard of King. You know Dracula and Frankenstein. She doesn't need to talk about those. These are nice recommendations. Some of them are incredibly dark and brutal and bleak. Some of them are a little more fun. There's a wide range of stuff in here. And yeah, I'm not going to show you anything inside because if you're interested, pick it up, read it for yourself. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I loved this book. I like the conversational style that she has when she's talking about these books. And I like that it is a nice mix of different types of books, different subgenres. It's a nice resource. It's well written. I found it entertaining. So there you go. 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. And just so you know, sort of Mother Horror Sadie Hartmann's bona fides. She is a reviewer, professional reviewer. She is a professional editor. She and her partner run Nightworms, which is a monthly horror book subscription box. I have never gotten one. They sell out very quickly. Often they have special editions of books, so you're going to get a different cover, let's say, than the one that you'd pick up at Barnes & Noble or wherever, I believe. I'd like to dip my toe into the Nightworms boxes. And you also get like bookmarks and coffee or tea, different things, little special things sprinkled in there. But I think it's like 2 books per box. So she's done interviews. They have a YouTube channel. Nightworms has a YouTube channel. Excuse me. So she knows what she's talking about when it comes to horror, and like everybody else, she has different tastes. Um, Again, two books in particular that she's not a fan of. One I have no interest in reading. The other one I can't remember what the second one was. I can distinctly remember what one of them was. I don't remember what the second one was. So I don't remember if that one ever interested me or not. But I think that's it. I ran out of steam. There you go. Again, love that cover. Um, a great book for any horror fan. Question for this video. I guess I'm not sure that this is a great question. Can you hear the crying baby? That's not the question for this video. That's just a general question. There's a baby crying. I'm wondering if you can hear it. The question for this video, is this the kind of book that interests you? Do you read, whether or not you're a horror fan, science fiction, whatever genre you like to read in, do you like to read nonfiction about that genre? Obviously, I do. I like books like this. I have the 2 volumes of He Who Types Between the Rows by Mark Cyber, which are book reviews, horror book reviews for the most part. I think there's some other things sprinkled in there. I like horror. I just recently read the book Horror Noir. That's movies, not books. But I like this kind of stuff. I have in the pop culture and philosophy. There's pop culture or Frankenstein and philosophy. There's, although that delves mainly with the book, but gets into the movies a little bit. There's Dracula in philosophy. There's Undead in philosophy. Rue Morgue magazine used to put out these square-bound special edition magazines. I don't think they're considered books. I don't have all of them. I missed a bunch, and they're really hard to find now. But they talked about movies, books. I like this kind of stuff. It's kind of like the reason I still buy Blu-rays and DVDs is for all the behind-the-scenes stuff. I like reading about the things that I like, if that makes sense. Brian Keene, quite a lot of, well, I mean, it's a small portion of his books, but quite a few nonfiction books. I dig it. But what about you? Is this something that interests you? And how deep would you go? Would you pick up a book that's going to give you suggestions for what to read? Or do you delve deeper? Do you get into the mind of a writer? Do you get into the philosophy of books or whatever it happens to be? I've reviewed some behind the scenes books on movies. I actually just got a book called The Last Action Heroes. It's a nonfiction book that's about basically about Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Bruce Willis, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the 90s action heroes. I like that kind of stuff, and I especially like it when it's a big part of basically who I am, horror. What about you? That was pretty long-winded. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Excuse me. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. My Blue Sky is @ELSmith. And that's it. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I've been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.